What's going on, guys? It's Crash Shot MMA back with another video, and today we're going to be doing just a quick recap of the fight night from Saturday, a couple of days ago, Kape versus Almabayev. I already posted my predictions video for this before that fight night, so now I just want to go over because there's a lot to talk about, especially with the main event and some of the later fights that a lot of people thought were pretty controversial. So, that being said, though, I did want to start with the main event because I did feel like it was the most important to cover. So, one thing I want to start with was that it was a very entertaining fight. I love watching Manel Kape fight. He's probably my favorite flyweight. And aside from the controversy with the eye pokes, I think he looked great in this fight. As you probably saw by the thumbnail, I was pretty impressed by this performance. He showed a lot of incredible defensive wrestling and distance control and distance management. So it was actually a pretty impressive performance from him. That being said, we do kind of have to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the controversy with the eye pokes in this fight. Now, if you didn't know, throughout this fight, before Manel managed to get the TKO, he had eye poked Asu Almabayev a couple of times throughout the fight. And a lot of people are saying, he's a dirty fighter, he's a cheater. But I want to make my opinion on this very clear, which is that I don't think Manel Kape really did all that much wrong. If you watch the instances where Asu got eye poked, they weren't instances where Manel, had his fingers completely outstretched in his glove and like what Chris Weidman did to Bruno Silva or any of that kind of eye poke, or like even what Henry Cejudo got hit with. It wasn't nearly as bad as those eye pokes. They were just glancing eye pokes that to me looked like punches when I watched it. And another huge criticism I'm seeing of this fight is that the ref didn't step in to stop the eye pokes. The problem is, though, when you actually watch that fight live, I know that the majority of people probably thought they were punches. Now, I know some people who anytime a fighter grabs their eye, immediately assumes it's an eye poke. But oftentimes we'll see fighters who just get punched in the eye and do the same thing thinking it's an eye poke. So on original watch of the fight, I assume that's what it was, and therefore I also assume that's what the ref had also seen, was sort of Manel Kape's punch and Asu thinking he got eye poked, and especially since it wasn't a bad eye poke, so Asu didn't react too negatively, I don't think he wanted to stop the fight. And the other thing too is that if the eye pokes were really that bad, I think we would have seen much more of a reaction from Asu than we actually saw. Manel looked phenomenal in this fight. He was, pretty easily outstriking Asu Almabayev. So regardless of the eye pokes, everyone's talking about how when he turned his back and ran away a couple of times. I don't think that was only to do with the eye poke. What I think partially factored into that was the fact that Manel had immense pressure. He was hurt because Manel was, hitting him with good shots. And I think Asu realized his takedowns were completely useless. He didn't land a single takedown this entire fight. And his attempts, 6 attempts, as you can see, he every time he was getting in a tough situation, he shot. But the problem is, Manel's sprawls are insane. And Asu just couldn't get him down, couldn't grab a hold of him well, and that's what I said. Manel Kape's defensive wrestling is pretty tremendous. So, because of that, I think Asu partially ran. Maybe the eye pokes had a little bit more of an effect than some people say, but those were not that bad of eye pokes, and therefore I don't really want to taint Manel Kape's great performance, at least before the fouls, by just saying, oh, he cheated or something, because at the end of the day, the ref didn't stop the fight. They were very clearly unintentional eye pokes, in my opinion. Even people who you can argue have intentional eye pokes now and again, John Jones, people like that, I don't think you could argue that Manel's were intentional at all. And Mike Beltran didn't stop at the action. Therefore, Manel Kape and Asu Almabayev, it was their job to continue fighting. So, some people may disagree with me here, but I do personally think that Manel Kape didn't really do anything wrong. Should Mike Beltran maybe have stopped the fight at some point and called a foul? Yes. But then again, I still think Manel Kape would have finished Asu just off of the way the fight was going. And even if not for that eye poke in that exchange, I still think he was going to get finished. So yeah, he was just sort of breaking. He was running away. And technically, if you're running away, like you're turning your back and running, you're supposed to be disqualified anyway. And Manel managed to land some good strikes and get it stopped regardless. And the number one thing I wanted to talk about with this fight is how good Manel Kape has looked in his last couple of performances. Against Bruno Silva, Asu, and even in moments against Makayev before he broke his foot. He has had tremendous success. He looks very fast, very explosive, great striking. And the other thing is, it's like impossible to take this guy down. Like, his takedown defense is incredible. His sprawls are amazing. And I'm really excited to see this guy fight Pantoja in the future. Because people forget, dude. People forget, man. Manel Kape actually had a competitive fight with Pantoja earlier in their UFC careers, before Pantoja was champion and when Manel Kape was still starting. I think it was actually his debut fight. And it went to a competitive decision. Now I think Manel Kape's better than ever. I would love to see them run that fight back. I'd love to see him fight Kai Kara France as well, Roy Val. There's so many good fights that Manel has at the top of this division that I would like to see. Asu, he didn't even look too bad. His grappling is still quite good, and his striking didn't even look too bad. Like, he was still able to hang in there at times with Manel, land a couple of, good body kicks and such. I could see him, beating some guys, maybe like beating a Tim Elliott or beating, say, an Urseg. Like, I think he would have beat Urseg if they fought in their originally scheduled bout. So, overall good fight. Aside from the controversy, I think Manel Kape had a great performance. Next, we got to talk about the Cody Brundage win. I didn't think it would be as convincing as it was. If you asked me a couple of weeks ago, I would never have thought I'd see a Cody Brundage legitimate W in the UFC. Obviously, he has had some. I'm just exaggerating a little bit, but, I'm used to seeing this guy quit, like against Jacob Malkoun, and just, shit the bed basically every performance. But, this time he came out and he looked pretty good against Julian Marquez and managed to rock him really badly and get him out of there at the end of the first round. Julian Marquez ended up like on all fours getting ground and pounded, and not much to talk about here. It was a competitive fight, which obviously they're both like bottom of the barrel middleweights, so obviously it's going to be competitive. Like, neither of them are very good, but Cody Brundage did actually get this win, which sucks because that means he's probably not going to get cut from the UFC, which means we're going to have to probably deal with another controversial thing where he gets barely hit, like, on the side of the head and lays down and starts, like, crying, saying that he got hit in the back of the head. So, I just want them to fucking cut this guy, but we're not going to get that yet. So, good win from Cody Brundage, I guess, but moving on to, in my opinion, the most egregious robbery of the card. There was a couple close fights on this card, but this pissed me off more than anything. Nasrat Haqparast versus Esteban Ribovics. This was such a clear robbery to me, and I really don't see how they scored it for Nasrat. In addition, this is the second robbery win Nasrat has had in his last two fights. He beat Jared Gordon on the cards, even though realistically I thought Jared Gordon clearly won that fight. And the exact same thing happened here. He ruined a prospect in Esteban Ribovics who I had high hopes for. I'll give him this. It was a very entertaining fight. It was very fun to watch. That being said, I think that the decision was bogus, to put it like that. Bogus is a crazy word. I don't know why I picked that one, but you know, Esteban just looked a little bit cleaner on the feet, and I think he did better towards the end of the fight. And I don't think the wrestling from Nasrat was that effective. Obviously, he didn't really have much success with most of his takedown attempts, and even when he did get him down, it wasn't, you know, changing the course of the fight or anything. I thought it was pretty clearly 2-1 Esteban. Although, they do say like every competitive fight can be every like super close fight could be considered a robbery. I don't really blame Nasrat. It kind of sucks for him, honestly, that he's like basically won a robbery in his last two fights. It makes the fans not like you very much, even though realistically it's the judge's fault. It's not even his fault. But I think the most annoying part about this is that Esteban Ribovics, who was he was the prospect in the lightweight division that I was the most excited about, just because I like watching him fight. Like, he's not necessarily the most elite, but I thought he was cool. I like watching him fight. He has great boxing, and he's quite speedy and quick, but it just kind of sucks that he's losing this momentum and losing this hype to Nasrat in this fight. But I do think he will bounce back. Nasrat, I don't know where you go from here, because honestly, if he takes a tougher fight and then loses that's kind of cooked. And, I think he's just got to avoid having another super close fight, because if all he's having is close fights, that's not going to be a good look. That being said, speaking of close competitive fights, William Gomez versus Haider Emil. I thought Haider Emil pretty clearly won this fight. I don't know necessarily how, it went to a split decision so easily. Speaking of which, let me just say this. My picks were pretty terrible on this card. I got the Nasrat Esteban one technically wrong. I got this one wrong picking Gomez. And I got this Danny Barlow versus Sam Patterson one wrong. But we'll talk about that in a second. That being said, Haider Emil, great performance from him. He just showed that he was more well-rounded and better. William Gomez had moments, though. Don't get me wrong. This was a very competitive fight, and William Gomez is a very fun fighter to watch for me. But the thing really is, he just got outstruck. Round one, I honestly think you could give to Gomez, but the last two rounds I think were pretty clearly Haider Emil. You could maybe give round two to William Gomez, but I think that's even a little bit of a stretch. But regardless, even though this was a close competitive fight, it was a very good fight. Props to William Gomez. Good performance from him as well. And Haider Emil, that was definitely a great performance. He's going to do some pretty good things in the featherweight division, hopefully. Oops. Now I want to talk about this one. Danny Barlow versus Sam Patterson. Now, I did say, if you watched my predictions video, I thought Danny Barlow was going to win, but I did say that he has a very overrated, resume and career, and I could see Sam Patterson going in there and, just beating him. And that's what happened. I didn't expect it was going to happen in this way. Like, round one knockout is, if I knew Sam Patterson was going to win, I wouldn't say round one knockout would be what would happen, but, he won very convincingly. It was a very impressive performance. Here's the thing about this fight. Like, I don't necessarily think Danny Barlow's completely cooked or anything, or like completely fraud checked. Really what it was is he was honestly winning pretty clearly, so like for the majority of the round, the round went most of the way. And I thought Danny Barlow looked really good. He was fast. He was a little bit more accurate. Sam Patterson looked pretty good as well. He was landing occasionally. But really what happened is Sam Patterson rocked him because Danny Barlow got a little bit careless, left his hands down. Sam Patterson rocked him badly. And after that happened, Danny Barlow, instead of trying to recover or stay a little bit, safe, shell up or something, he swung this just like wild like two-piece combination and ended up getting clipped again, dropped into the fence, and then finished against the fence with some shots. So really I think the problem here for Danny Barlow was fight IQ, keeping his hands down and getting a little bit careless and getting countered, and not fighting smart after getting rocked. That being said, good win from Sam Patterson. It was a pretty impressive KO. It was really satisfying to watch because he dropped him, like he hit him into the fence and dropped him really badly. But yeah, Sam Patterson looked pretty fast in that fight. Very explosive, and he's quite tall. He's 6'3", so it was a good performance. Not like too much to talk about, but I thought it was a good fight. Speaking of good performances, yeah, Austin Lane, bro, you're cooked. I already talked about this, but Austin Lane, he overall ended up getting cooked by Mario Pinto. It was a brutal KO. Laid Austin Lane out. Not much to talk about here, other than the fact that I think Mario Pinto's actually kind of good. Austin Lane had a similar thing to the well, I wouldn't call it similar to the Janata Denise thing because that was more wrestling, but where they had a round one where Austin Lane actually saw a little bit of success, and then he just shows that he's slower and doesn't have a chin and just gets brutally chinned round two. It was pretty crazy. It was like a 1-2, and he got slept with a huge right hook. Like Mario Pinto swung it. Austin Lane literally, it looked like a Johnny Walker when he got KO'd by Jamal Hill. He just got flattened. It was pretty crazy, but yeah, I knew it was gonna happen. Austin Lane, he's not necessarily cut out for fighting and all that. He's you know older. Mario Pinto's like young, up and coming, more athletic, and just more talented at fighting. Started training a lot earlier, so you know overall, I think it was to be expected, but it is a very cool knockout, very impressive. So that would be one if you want to like watch the replay of that fight. It's a short fight just to see the knockout there. That as well as the Danny Barlow Sam Patterson KO were very satisfying to watch. And of course, we got to talk about these two fights. Ricardo Ramos, Chepe Mariscal. You know, I I kind of knew it was going to happen. Chepe Mariscal is really good. He 30-27 Ricardo Ramos outstruck him, outgrappled him. He just showed that he showed levels. He's just better everywhere. And there's not too much to talk about other than the fact that Chepe has some great options available to him at featherweight now, and I'm excited to see where he goes from here. Danny Silva, Lucas Almeida. This I picked Danny Silva. Like, I did much better on the prelims than I did on the main card, because main card I got the first three fights wrong, and then the top two I obviously got right. But prelims, I believe I got all of them right except the Charles Johnson one. So Danny Silva, Lucas Almeida was a pretty impressive performance from Danny Silva. Like, it wasn't completely blowout, but this is another one where I thought it was pretty clearly a Danny Silva win. It did go to a split decision and it was competitive, but I don't think Lucas Almeida did enough to win 2 rounds off of him. Really, I think the only argument for him winning a round is round 3. I thought Lucas Almeida won round 3, but Danny Silva just looked much sharper early. He looked, more well-rounded. He was landing better. I think that Danny Silva didn't do as good as I expected him to do, but, it was a pretty good performance. Pretty clear 29-28 for Danny Silva, in my opinion. Now I got to talk about this one. This sucks because I was pretty confident in my boy Charles Johnson, but it was kind of a little bit of a too little too late type of situation with this fight. Round 1 and round 2, Ramazan just outstruck him. Really wasn't much grappling in those rounds. Round 3 was the round that Ramazan was able to successfully get a takedown, but Charles Johnson, pretty easily outstruck him in that round. He looked good in that round. As the fight went on, he looked better. But round 1 was very clearly Ramazan, and then round 2 was competitive, but I still gave it to Ramazan. He landed the better shots, and overall, I wasn't very impressed with Charles Johnson in this performance. I don't think Ramazan's that good still. I just think I think I was a little too high on Charles Johnson. That being said, I still think there's ways to go from here for him, but he looked great in round 3, but before that, I think he just didn't put his foot on the gas enough. I think he was just a little bit uh, not as sharp as Ramazan was. Overall, it was a very good fight, but I thought it was a pretty clear 29-28 for Ramazan, winning the first 2 rounds. Sucks that I got this pick wrong. Sucks that Charles Johnson lost because I am a fan of him. But that's MMA. So overall, I did pretty good on the card. So at least on the prelims. Let me know what you guys thought about the card, and think about how my picks turned out. Let me know also about what your guys' opinion is on the controversies, with the main event and the featured fight and all that. But yeah, we went 5-4 on the card, coin flip basically. So, you know, not the greatest, but yeah. Let me know what you guys thought of the fight night in the comments section, and I'll be back to posting bangers soon.